What happens when a man's bigotry meets a woman's power 30,000 feet in the air? On a packed flight from New York to London, one first-class passenger, Arthur Pendleton, decided his comfort was more important than a fellow passenger's dignity. He targeted a black woman, demanding she be removed, culminating in a vicious shout, "Get off this plane!" He expected the crew to obey. He expected her to be humiliated. What he didn't expect was her calm, six-word reply that would not only end his trip, but systematically destroy his entire life. "I own this airline." Before we begin, comment where you are watching from today, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Now let's get into it. The chaos of John F. Kennedy International Airport's Terminal 4 was a finely tuned orchestra of anxiety, and Serafina Hayes was sitting in the front row, observing her symphony. To the millions of passengers who passed through here, she was invisible. Just another woman in comfortable graphite gray trousers, a simple cashmere hoodie, and worn-in leather loafers. Her hair was pulled back in a simple, elegant bun, and the only jewelry she wore was a simple, understated watch. She carried no designer handbag, only a well-used leather satchel that contained her laptop and a notebook. This anonymity was her most valuable asset. Serafina Hayes was the CEO and majority shareholder of Astria Global Airways, one of the largest and most prestigious airlines in the world. She was 42 years old, had inherited the company from her father, and had spent the last decade turning it from a respectable national carrier into an international behemoth. She often flew incognito, especially on her flagship routes, to test her own product. She wanted to see the cracks. How were the gate agents really treating passengers? Was the priority boarding actually a priority? Was the five-star service in first class genuine, or just a performance for high-profile guests? Tonight she was flying Flight 108, JFK to London Heathrow. As she sat near Gate B26, she watched the gate agents, noting their strained smiles and the efficient, if impersonal, way they handled a delay. Then she heard his voice. "This is completely unacceptable. The coffee in the Centurion Lounge tastes like burnt gravel, and now you're telling me we're delayed by 20 minutes? The man was tall, florid-faced, and dressed in an aggressively expensive-looking suit that was just a little too tight. He flashed a platinum-plated, diamond-encrusted Astria Centurion card, the airline's most elite, invitation-only status. His name, as she'd soon learn, was Arthur Pendleton. The gate agent, a young woman named Chloe, remained professional. "I do apologize, Mr. Pendleton. It's a minor weight and balance calibration. We'll be boarding in just a few minutes and you will be the first to board, I assure you." "You'd better assure me," Pendleton sneered, snatching his card back. "I pay more for my annual membership than you make in a year. I expect punctuality." Serafina winced. That Centurion card was her own invention, a perk for clients who spent over $150,000 annually with the airline. It was meant to reward loyalty, not weaponize it. Pendleton paced, huffing and shooting dirty looks at the other passengers, as if they were personally responsible for his inconvenience. His gaze swept over Serafina, dismissed her in a nanosecond as irrelevant, and moved on. Finally, the announcement was made. "We now invite our Astria Centurion and first-class passengers to begin boarding." Pendleton was at the front, pushing his roller bag forward aggressively. Serafina stood, stretched, and fell in line behind him. As Pendleton handed his pass to the agent, he glanced back at Serafina, his lip curling in obvious disdain. He clearly assumed she was in the wrong line. "First class only, sweetheart," he muttered, loud enough for her to hear. Serafina ignored him, stepped forward, and scanned her own boarding pass. Beep. The light went green. The agent, Chloe, nodded. "Enjoy your flight, ma'am." Serafina walked down the jet bridge, acutely aware of Pendleton's heavy, disbelieving footsteps behind her. She entered the quiet, plush cabin of the 777 ER. The flight attendant at the door, Brenda, greeted her with a warm smile. "Welcome aboard. Miss Hayes, is it?" "Yes, Serafina is fine, thank you, Brenda. You're in 2B, the window seat. Can I take your coat?" "Just this satchel, thank you." Serafina said, stowing her own bag in the overhead bin. She slid into the luxurious seat pod, a self-contained suite with its own door. A moment later, Arthur Pendleton lumbered in. He saw his seat, 2A, the aisle seat right next to Serafina's. His face, already red, deepened to a shade of plum. He stared at Serafina, then at the seat number, then back at Serafina. "You," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You're in 2B?" Serafina looked up from settling in. "Yes, I am. Good evening." "No," Pendleton said, shaking his head. "No, I don't think so. There must be a mistake." "Flight attendant," he barked, snapping his fingers. Brenda hurried over. "Mr. Pendleton, sir, welcome aboard. Is everything all right?" "No, it is not all right," he said, gesturing at Serafina. "This woman is in my podmate's seat. My colleague is flying with me. He's supposed to be in 2B. Serafina frowned. She had checked the manifest. The seat next to her was booked under her own name, and 2A was booked under Arthur Pendleton. There was no colleague. Brenda looked at her tablet. "Sir, I have you in 2A, and Miss Hayes here is in 2B. Both seats are confirmed." "That's impossible," Pendleton spat. "Check again. She probably scammed her way in here. Look at her." Serafina, who had been trying to remain an observer, now felt the familiar hot sting of anger. She kept her voice perfectly level. "Sir, this is my assigned seat. I am a paying customer just like you." "Paying?" Pendleton let out a short, ugly laugh. "I highly doubt that. You probably got this on some diversity voucher. Or maybe you're one of the staff's friends." The implication was disgusting, and it hung in the air like poison. "Sir," Brenda said, her voice trembling slightly, "that is inappropriate. This is Miss Hayes's seat." "I don't care what your little computer says," Pendleton roared, his voice suddenly filling the entire first-class cabin. All conversation stopped. Passengers in their pods turned to look. "I am an Astria Centurion member. I will not sit next to someone like her for 10 hours. It's ridiculous. She is making me uncomfortable. Get her out of here." Serafina finally stood up, her 5'9" frame rising to meet his gaze. She was calm, her eyes like chips of obsidian. "What precisely," she asked, "is someone like me?" "You know exactly what I mean," he snarled. "You don't belong here. This cabin is for paying customers, for elites, not for affirmative action hires." The racism was no longer a subtext. It was the entire text. "Brenda," Pendleton commanded, "I am telling you as your highest value customer to move this person. Put her in the back. Put her in cargo. I don't care. Or I'll have your job. Do you understand me?" Brenda was trapped. She looked from the apoplectic, powerful Centurion member to the calm, unknown black woman. She was 20 years into her career. She knew how this worked. A complaint from a man like Pendleton could ground her for weeks. "Ma'am," Brenda said, turning to Serafina, her voice pleading, "I am so sorry for this misunderstanding. We do have another seat available. A very nice seat, in premium economy." Serafina's heart sank. This was the moment, the failure. Her own employee, trained in de-escalation and equity, was capitulating to a bully because he held a shiny card. "So that's it, Brenda," Serafina said, her voice dangerously quiet. "You're going to remove a ticketed first-class passenger because another passenger is a racist?" "Ma'am, please, I'm just trying to de-escalate." "No!" Pendleton shouted, stabbing a finger toward Serafina. "I'm not flying with her, it's me or her. Get her off this plane now, get her off!" The cabin was dead silent. A man in 3D was openly recording on his phone. Serafina Hayes held up one hand. The entire cabin seemed to hold its breath. She looked at Brenda, then at the other flight attendants who had gathered. Then her gaze landed on Arthur Pendleton, who was breathing heavily, his face triumphant, believing he had won. She leaned in, and in a voice that was not a shout, but a whisper that cut through the entire cabin, she delivered the 6 words that would change everything. "I am not getting off this plane." She paused, then added the line that would detonate his world. "Because I own this airline." For a full 5 seconds, the only sound in the cabin was the faint whir of the auxiliary power unit. Arthur Pendleton stared at Serafina, his face frozen in a mask of contemptuous disbelief. Then he exploded, not in anger, but in laughter, a loud, barking, derisive sound that echoed off the curved walls. "You?" he bellowed, clutching his stomach. "You own Astria? Oh, that is the richest thing I have ever heard. Honey, the best you could own is a weave shop in the Bronx. That's a good one. I own this airline." He turned to the other passengers, seeking allies in his mockery. "Did you hear that? This stowaway says she owns the plane. What's next? Are you the Queen of England too?" Serafina didn't flinch. Her expression remained one of glacial calm. She knew this was the second, more telling part of the test, the immediate public ridicule. But it was Brenda, the flight attendant, who was reacting. The color had drained from her face. Not because she believed Serafina, but because of the name. Hayes, the Hayes family, the founder Elias Hayes, the new CEO, Serafina Hayes. She was famously private. There were few public photos, and the ones that existed were from corporate events where she was in power suits, not hoodies. But the name... "Mr. Pendleton," Serafina said, ignoring his laughter, "your behavior is a direct violation of Astria's Conditions of Carriage, Section 4A, regarding passenger conduct. You have created an intimidating and hostile environment." "Ooh, Section 4A, he mocked. "Brenda, are you going to let this person quote regulations to me? I am your regulations. I want her removed. Call security. Call the police. Tell them she's threatening me." "That's enough," Serafina said, her voice finally taking on a hard edge of command. She turned to Brenda, who was fumbling with her company-issued tablet. "Brenda," Serafina said, "your employee number is 774B. You've been with us for 22 years. You're based out of LaGuardia, but took this JFK route for the overtime. You have 2 children in college and your husband just recovered from a knee operation. Correct?" Brenda's jaw dropped. Her hand flew to her mouth. How did you know that?" "It's my business to know," Serafina said softly. "Now on that tablet, I want you to open the company's internal directory. I want you to search for the CEO, right now." Pendleton's laughter died in his throat. He watched, a flicker of confusion crossing his features. What is this? Some kind of trick?" Brenda's fingers were shaking so badly she could barely type. She tapped the icon, opened the employee portal, and typed HAYES. The executive profile loaded, and there it was. The official corporate headshot of Serafina Hayes, CEO. It was the same woman. The same high cheekbones, the same piercing, intelligent eyes, the same person standing in front of her in a gray hoodie. Brenda let out a small, strangled gasp. The tablet slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the galley floor. She looked up at Serafina, her face a perfect mask of utter unadulterated horror. Miss Hayes," she whispered, her voice cracking. Oh my God, I didn't." "It's all right, Brenda," Serafina said, though her tone was cool. "Please retrieve the captain immediately." "Yes, ma'am. Right away, ma'am. I'm so sorry. Go, Brenda, now." Brenda practically ran to the cockpit door, swiped her card, and disappeared inside. The cabin was now so quiet it felt like a vacuum. The passenger in 3D was still recording, his hand visibly shaking. Arthur Pendleton's bravado had vanished, replaced by a sickly, pale confusion. What's going on? What did you call her? This is a joke, right? A prank?" Serafina simply held his gaze, saying nothing. A moment later, the cockpit door opened. Captain Mark Reynolds emerged, followed by his first officer and the trembling Brenda. Captain Reynolds was a veteran pilot, ex-Air Force, and had a no-nonsense demeanor. He looked annoyed at being pulled from his pre-flight checks. "What is the meaning of this?" he said, his voice a low rumble. "We have a schedule to keep." Pendleton's confidence surged back, seeing an authority figure. Captain, thank God. This woman, he pointed at Serafina again, is harassing me. She's delusional, claiming she owns the airline, and she's refusing to move from a seat that isn't hers. I demand you have her arrested. Captain Reynolds looked at Serafina, his brow furrowed. He didn't recognize her either. He turned to Brenda. Brenda, what's the story? Brenda, close to tears, just pointed at Serafina and stammered, Sir, that is her, that's CEO Hayes. The captain's face went through 3 distinct phases in 2 seconds. Annoyance, confusion, and then dawning comprehension so profound it looked like he'd been struck by lightning. He had been at the annual shareholders meeting via video call just last week. He'd seen her face on a 40-foot screen. His entire military-honed posture snapped to attention. He smoothed his uniform jacket. Miss Hayes, he said, his voice suddenly crisp and formal. My deepest apologies. I am Captain Reynolds. I was not aware you were on board. Arthur Pendleton's world stopped. The blood drained from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. He staggered back, grabbing the seat divider for support. What did you call her? He whispered. No, that's impossible. She can't be. She's what, Mr. Pendleton? Serafina asked, her voice like steel. She's black. She's dressed too simply. She doesn't look like the CEO. She turned to Captain Reynolds. Captain, this passenger, Mr. Arthur Pendleton, has caused a severe public disturbance. He has used racially derogatory and abusive language toward me and has threatened a member of your crew. He is, in my judgment, not fit to fly. I want him off my plane. The reversal was absolute. The power dynamic had shifted so violently it left an aftershock. I Pendleton stammered, his eyes wide with panic. I was confused. I thought there was a mistake. It was a misunderstanding. There was no misunderstanding, Mr. Pendleton, Serafina said. Get her off this plane. People like you. Affirmative action. Those were not misunderstandings. Those were your choices. Please, he begged, his entire demeanor crumbling. He turned to Serafina, his hands clasped. Ma'am, Miss Hayes, I am so sorry. I was stressed. The delay. I didn't mean it. Please, I have to be in London for a meeting. It's vital. Serafina looked at him, her expression unreadable. You should have thought of that before you decided to publicly dehumanize a person you'd never met. Captain, please have airport security meet us at the gate. With pleasure, Miss Hayes, Captain Reynolds said. He gestured to his first officer. Call operations. Code 3. Unruly passenger. Removal. No, please, Pendleton shrieked. You can't do this to me. I am a Centurion member. I spend $150,000 a year with this airline. You can't just… Your status, Serafina said, walking past him to speak quietly with the captain, is suspended, effective immediately. Your membership, your miles, and your privileges are revoked. You are, as of this moment, permanently banned from Astria Global Airways. For life. The finality of it hit him like a physical blow. He wasn't just losing his flight. He was losing his status, the very thing he had used as a weapon. As the first officer made the call, Pendleton's panic turned back to a desperate, pathetic rage. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. This is discrimination against me. You bitch, you set me up. 2 Port Authority officers, already stationed at the gate for the delay, were on the jet bridge in seconds. They entered the cabin, their expressions grim. Mr. Pendleton, one officer said, you need to come with us. Please gather your belongings quietly. This is an outrage, he shouted, but his voice was thin and reedy. He grabbed his roller bag from the bin. As the officers flanked him, he was marched past the silent first-class cabin, past the staring, wide-eyed passengers in business class, and out the door. His final parting shot was a desperate, "You haven't heard the last of this." And then he was gone. The cabin was silent. Serafina let out a long, slow breath. She turned to the passengers. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Serafina Hayes, the CEO of this airline. I sincerely apologize for the disturbance and the further delay. We will be underway as soon as possible. Please accept a full refund for your flight today and 50,000 bonus miles as a token of our regret. The bar is open. Please enjoy your flight." She then turned to the ashen-faced crew. "Brenda, Captain, my office. When we land." She sat down in 2B, pulled the privacy door shut, and for the first time let her mask of calm drop. She wasn't angry anymore. She was furious. But not just at Pendleton. She was furious that her own system had been so willing to fail. The immediate threat was gone. But Serafina Hayes knew the real work, and the real karma, had only just begun. As the 777 finally ascended into the smooth, dark expanse over the Atlantic, the first-class cabin settled into a surreal quiet. The open bar was being liberally utilized, and the passenger from 3D, a tech blogger named Jason Wu, was already typing furiously, his video file uploading to the cloud via the plane's high-speed Wi-Fi. The story was already breaking, but Serafina Hayes was not resting. She had declined the caviar service, the 5-course meal, and the champagne. Instead, she had a pot of black coffee and her laptop. The pod door was closed, her do not disturb light was on, and she was conducting the fastest, most high-stakes corporate investigation of her life. The first person she called, via the plane's satellite connection, was her chief legal officer, David Chen. "David," she said, her voice low and steady. "I need you to wake up. We have a situation." She relayed the incident with terse, precise language. The insults, the escalation, the public nature of it, and the final removal. David, ever the lawyer, was immediately on high alert. A public racist incident, and he threatened a crew member? Good. We're ironclad on the removal and the lifetime ban. He can sue all he wants. Our conditions of carry-on are explicit. He'll lose. "That's not why I'm calling, David," Serafina said, her fingers flying across her keyboard. "I'm not worried about him suing us. I'm worried about who he is." "What do you mean? You said his name was Arthur Pendleton." "Arthur Pendleton," Serafina read from her screen. "I just ran his advantage number through our corporate partners database. He's not just a frequent flyer, David. He's an SVP of logistics at Vanguard Solutions." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. "Oh no, that Vanguard?" "The very one," Serafina confirmed, her voice grim. Vanguard Solutions was not just any contractor. They were a $10 billion global logistics firm, and they held the single largest third-party contract with Astria Global Airways. Vanguard handled all of Astria's North American and European ground operations, baggage handling, cargo screening, and tarmac logistics. It was a $4 billion contract set for renewal in just 6 weeks. Arthur Pendleton wasn't just a passenger. He was one of their most critical high-level partners, the man who had just publicly humiliated the CEO of his largest client. "Serafina," David said, his voice now hushed. This is bad, or good depending on how you want to play it. Their renewal negotiation is on the 15th. We've been looking for leverage to renegotiate the fuel surcharge clause." "This isn't about leverage, David," Serafina snapped. "This is about rot, this man, the entitlement, the sheer unadulterated confidence he had that everyone would bend to his bigotry. Where does that come from? It comes from a corporate culture that supports it. A culture that has been interacting with my employees on the ground for a decade." She was typing again, pulling up reports. "I'm looking at the ground crew complaints for JFK, O'Hare, and Heathrow for the last 12 months. Dozens of HR flags. Vanguard manager being verbally abusive. Vanguard team using derogatory language. Unsafe loading procedures dismissed by Vanguard supervisor. We've been treating these as isolated incidents, David. We've been fools." "What do you want to do?" David asked. "I want to know who his boss is. Get me the name and private cell of the CEO of Vanguard Solutions. I want him on a video call the second I land at Heathrow. I don't care what time it is." "That would be Robert Chen," David said. "No relation. I have his number. He's based in Chicago. It'll be 2 a.m. his time when you land. He'll take the call, Serafina said. Now pull up the brand and moral turpitude clause in our contract with them. Section 12, I believe. Read it to me. David found it. In the event that any key personnel assigned to the Astria account engages in conduct that, in Astria's sole determination, constitutes moral turpitude, illegality, or causes significant brand or reputational damage, Astria reserves the right to demand immediate removal of said personnel and to invoke a 30-day review period to assess penalties, up to and including immediate termination of this agreement. A slow, cold smile spread across Serafina's face. That'll do. Send me a copy. And David, get our internal audit team ready. I want a full, top-to-bottom review of every interaction we have with Vanguard. I want to know everything. I suspect Mr. Pendleton isn't a bad apple. I think he's a symptom of a poisoned tree. She hung up and finally leaned her head back against the seat. The anger was fading, replaced by a cold, calculating resolve. This was no longer about a rude man on a plane. This was about a cancer in her company's ecosystem. Meanwhile, back in New York, Arthur Pendleton was not taking his defeat well. He had been escorted to a holding room by the Port Authority, who cited him for disorderly conduct and released him into the public terminal. He was stuck at JFK, his London flight gone, his name now on a no-fly list for Astria. He was incandescent with rage. He got on his phone, not to his wife, but to his own contacts at Astria, junior executives in the logistics department that he'd taken to baseball games and expensive dinners. "Tom, you will not believe what just happened to me," he yelled into his phone, pacing by a Sparrow. Some woman on the flight, a total lunatic impersonating Serafina Hayes. And the crew believed her. They dragged me off the plane. Me, Art Pendleton. He spent the next hour working the phones, calling in every favor he had, demanding the crew of Flight 108 be fired, demanding the impersonator be arrested, and demanding a private jet be chartered to get him to London by morning. He was the victim. He was the one who had been wronged. What he didn't know was that with every call, he was digging his own grave. The junior execs, terrified, were forwarding his unhinged voicemails and texts up the chain of command. By the time Serafina's plane was over Ireland, a full dossier on Pendleton's panicked, threatening calls was sitting in her inbox, forwarded by her legal team. He wasn't just a bigot. He was a bully who believed his power was absolute. He had no idea that the power he was challenging wasn't just a flight attendant. It was the woman who signed the checks that paid his mortgage. Back on the plane, Serafina had one last task. She rang the call bell. Brenda appeared a second later, her face pale and her eyes red. She had clearly been crying in the galley. "You called, Miss Hayes?" "Brenda, please sit down," Serafina said, gesturing to the ottoman. Brenda perched on the edge, wringing her hands. "Ma'am, I cannot apologize enough. I panicked. He's a centurion. They file complaints that they can end your career. I saw your hoodie and I made an assumption. It was racist. I'll tender my resignation as soon as we land." Serafina studied her for a long moment. "You did make an assumption. You failed to protect a passenger. You failed to follow your training, which is to de-escalate the aggressor, not the victim. You were about to punish me for the crime of being racially harassed." Brenda's shoulders shook. "Yes, ma'am. You're right. But," Serafina continued, "you're also right about why you did it. You were scared. Not of him, but of the system. A system that I built. A system that has taught you that a platinum card is more valuable than your own judgment. A system that makes a man like Pendleton feel entitled to act that way in the first place." She leaned forward. "I'm not firing you, Brenda." Brenda looked up, her eyes wide with shock. "Ma'am? You're not being fired. You're being promoted temporarily. I don't understand." "When we land," Serafina said, "you are grounded. For the next 6 weeks, you will be the co-lead of a new internal task force. the Astria Dignity Initiative. Your first job is to use what happened tonight, every single humiliating second of it, to rewrite our de-escalation and unconscious bias training from the ground up. You're going to use your 22 years of experience to fix the system that broke you tonight. Do you understand? Tears were now streaming down Brenda's face, but for a different reason. Yes, Miss Hayes. I won't let you down. Thank you. Don't thank me, Serafina said, her voice hard again. Go back to work. We've got a corporation to fix. Flight 108 touched down at Heathrow under a gray, drizzling dawn. The moment the fasten seatbelt sign pinged off, Serafina's phone buzzed. It was David Chen. He's on, David said. Robert Chen, CEO of Vanguard. He's on a secure video line. He's confused and very grumpy. It's 2:30 a.m. his time. He thinks it's a server outage emergency. Good, Serafina said. Patch him through to my laptop as soon as I'm in the car. I'm walking off now. Serafina was the first passenger off the plane. She gave a curt, professional nod to Captain Reynolds and Brenda, who were waiting by the door. Good flight, Captain. Brenda, my office will email you the initiative brief by noon. She bypassed the normal customs line, escorted by a VIP airport manager who had been frantically alerted. She was whisked into a private lounge and then into a waiting black Mercedes S-Class on the tarmac. The door closed, sealing her in silence. Heathrow to the London office, driver. And I need privacy. A glass partition hissed up, dividing the car. Serafina opened her laptop. David, I'm ready. A video call window popped up. On the screen was Robert Chen, a man in his late 60s, appearing rumpled in a silk pajama top, his hair standing on end. He was clearly in a home office, and he looked furious. Serafina, what in God's name is this? I was told this was a level 1 emergency. My North American mainframe is fine. Do you know what time it is? I do, Robert, Serafina said, her face illuminated by the glow of the laptop. It's 2:30 a.m. in Chicago. It's 7:30 a.m. here in London. And in New York, it's 1:30 a.m., which is when your senior-most executive on my account, Arthur Pendleton, was finally released from Port Authority custody at JFK. The color drained from Robert Chen's face. The anger was replaced by a sudden cold dread. What did you say? Arthur? Arrested? Oh, arrested is such a strong word, Serafina said, her voice dripping ice. He was detained. He was removed from my aircraft, Flight 108, after a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Over what? A baggage fee? Serafina's eyes narrowed. No, Robert. It was over the color of my skin. She then, in precise, excruciating detail, recounted the entire event. She told him what Pendleton said about her being in the wrong line, about the diversity voucher, about the affirmative action hire. And she culminated with his final, screaming demand, "Get her off this plane!" Robert Chen was speechless. He looked physically ill. But, Serafina, it's monstrous, but he didn't know it was you, did he? Serafina let that question hang in the air. And that's the part that concerns me most, Robert. You're asking the wrong question. The question isn't, did he know it was me? The question is, why did he think he could say that to anyone? I will fire him, Chen stammered, scrambling. This is unconscionable. He's fired, this morning. I'll make the call right now. Sit down, Robert. Firing him is the appetizer. We're on to the main course, Serafina said. She pulled up another file. While Mr. Pendleton was having his meltdown, I had my legal team do some digging. He's not just a bigot, he's a liability, and I suspect he's just the tip of your iceberg. What are you talking about? Our service record is exemplary. Your service record, Serafina countered, includes 14 formal HR complaints from my ground staff against your managers in the last quarter alone. Allegations of sexual harassment, verbal abuse, and racial slurs. All of them from your people against mine. And all of them, I note, were resolved by your team by simply rotating the offending manager to a different airport. You're not solving problems, Robert. You're just moving them. She continued, relentless. Furthermore, my audit team just did a spot check of your baggage handling logs at JFK. Your team, under Pendleton's cost-saving directives, has been skipping mandatory secondary scan security protocols on 15% of all transfer baggage. You are in breach of FAA regulations. You are in breach of our contract. You are putting my passengers, my planes, and my company at risk, all to save a few pennies per bag. Robert Chen's face was now gray. He was no longer a CEO. He was a man watching his company burn to the ground in real time. Serafina, I didn't know. I swear. Pendleton, he's in charge of that whole division. He faked the reports. He works for you, Robert. The rot stops at the top. And right now, the top is you. Serafina leaned into the camera. As of 7:35 Greenwich Mean Time, Astria Global is invoking Section 12, the Moral Turpitude Clause, of our agreement. We are placing our $4 billion contract under immediate 30-day review. No, Serafina, please, you can't, Chen pleaded. That contract is 40% of our annual revenue. You'll bankrupt us. The board will have my head. Think of the shareholders. I am thinking of my shareholders, Serafina said, her voice dropping to a whisper. And I'm thinking of my employees, who your people have been abusing. I'm thinking of my passengers, whose safety your team has been compromising. And I'm thinking of me, a black woman who your executive thought he could treat like garbage because I was wearing a hoodie. What do I have to do? Chen whispered, defeated. Whatever it is, I'll do it. Here's what's going to happen, Serafina said, pulling up her list. 1. Arthur Pendleton is not just fired. You will issue a public press release this morning naming him and stating he was terminated for gross misconduct and violation of client trust. I want his name attached to this, so he can never work in this industry again. 2. You will fire, not rotate, every single manager named in those 14 hours complaints. By noon today, Chicago time. 3. You are flying to London. Today. You will be in my office tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. with a complete plan to overhaul your company's security protocols and your entire HR and ethics division, and you are bringing your new permanent replacement for Pendleton with you. And 4, she said, adding the final devastating blow, the contract renewal. We are not renewing at the current rate. You will cut your fee by 25%. You will absorb all fuel surcharge costs, and you will pay a one-time penalty of $50 million for the security breaches. That is my price for the reputational and operational damage your company has caused. Chen looked like he was going to have a heart attack. 25%, and $50 million. Serafina, that's... We'll be operating at a loss. You'll be operating, Serafina corrected him, which is more than I can say for you if I walk. You have 30 days, Robert, but I'd suggest you start today, because as of right now, I have my legal team drafting RFPs for every one of your competitors. Swissport, Donata, you name it. They're all very hungry for your business. She looked at the man, who had visibly aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Do we have an understanding, Robert? He could only nod, his face slick with a cold sweat. Yes, Serafina. We have an understanding. I'll book my flight. I'd recommend you fly Astria, Serafina said, her voice flat. Our service is excellent. She ended the call. The car pulled up to her corporate headquarters. Serafina Hayes stepped out into the London rain, her face impassive. The first battle was over. Now, the war for her company's soul and Arthur Pendleton's complete and total ruin was about to begin. As Serafina was methodically dismantling Vanguard Solutions from her S-Class, the video taken by Jason Wu, the blogger in 3D, was detonating on the internet. He had uploaded it with a simple, devastating title. Racist passenger tries to kick black woman off flight, finds out she owns the airline. Astria Global Flight 108. The video was 90 seconds of pure, uncut humiliation. It started with Pendleton's face, contorted in rage, pointing and shouting. People like you shouldn't even be in this cabin." It captured his sneering imitation. "I own this airline." And it captured the stunning cinematic reversal, the pilot's face changing, the blood draining from Pendleton's, and his pathetic "I was just confused." By the time Serafina walked into her office, the video had 10 million views. By noon, it was 50 million. The hashtags #I_own_this_airline, #Arthur Pendleton, and #Astria CEO were the top 3 trending topics on Earth. The story was everywhere. CNN, BBC, Fox News, TMZ. Every outlet picked it up. Arthur Pendleton's face was plastered on every screen, his name synonymous with racism and entitlement. Serafina Hayes, conversely, was instantly lionized. She was hailed as a new icon of corporate power and black excellence. She was the CEO who didn't flinch, a queen of karma. Her communications department was in a full-blown panic, fielding thousands of media requests. Serafina walked into the war room, took a sip of tea, and gave a simple command. "Lean into it," she said. The PR head looked stunned. "Ma'am, lean into it? The stock is wobbling." "The stock is wobbling because the market hates uncertainty," Serafina said. "So let's give them certainty. Draft a statement. Confirm everything. Confirm my identity. Confirm Mr. Pendleton's behavior. Confirm his permanent lifetime ban from Astria." She then added, "And I want to add a line. At Astria Global, we believe our cabins must be a safe space for all passengers, regardless of race, creed, or background. We have a zero-tolerance policy for harassment of any kind. This policy, it seems, also extends to our corporate partners." "That last line, ma'am," the comms chief said, "that sounds pointed. It's meant to be, Sarah. Send it." That one line, "extends to our corporate partners," was a nuclear bomb in the business world. It was a signal. The press, smelling blood, immediately started digging. Who was Arthur Pendleton? It took them less than an hour to connect him to Vanguard Solutions. And then, at 10 a.m. London time, Vanguard's own press release hit the wires, just as Serafina had demanded. "Vanguard Solutions has terminated, effective immediately, our SVP of Logistics, Arthur Pendleton, for gross misconduct and a violation of professional ethics that resulted in a flagrant breach of client trust. Mr. Pendleton's personal behavior on Astria Flight 108 is not reflective of Vanguard's values of respect, integrity, and partnership." The media went into a feeding frenzy. It was a corporate bloodbath. Vanguard stock, when the market opened, didn't just wobble, it nosedived. It fell 30% in the first hour of trading. Billions in value were wiped out. Arthur Pendleton, who had finally gotten home to his palatial Connecticut suburb after a humiliating 6-hour bus ride from JFK, was discovering his life was over. He woke up to his phone vibrating itself off his nightstand. He had hundreds of missed calls. His wife Julia was screaming at him from the living room, watching CNN. "Arthur, what did you do?" He stumbled downstairs to see his own purple shouting face on his 80-inch television. He saw the Vanguard press release. He saw the video. He tried to log into his company email. Access denied. He tried to log into his bank account to check his stock options. Account frozen pending review. His severance was gone. His unvested stock, worth millions, was gone, clawed back under the moral turpitude clause of his own employment contract. He wasn't just fired. He was radioactive. His phone rang again. It was a number he didn't recognize. He picked it up, desperate. "Hello. This is all a mistake." "Mr. Pendleton?" a crisp voice said. "This is Emily Rodriguez from the New York Times. We'd like to get your comment on the video." He threw the phone across the room. His doorbell rang. He looked out the peephole. A dozen news vans were parked on his manicured lawn. Reporters were swarming his front door. He was a prisoner in the very home his arrogance had paid for. But the karma wasn't finished with him. His wife, Julia, was a high-profile board member for several prominent New York charities. Her phone was also blowing up. By 3 p.m., she had been asked to resign from 2 of them to avoid disruption. Her social circle, the one they had spent decades building, evaporated in an afternoon. She was uninvited from the benefit gala. Her friends, the wives of other executives, suddenly didn't know her. When Arthur tried to plead with her to explain, she just looked at him with cold, dead eyes. You ruined us, Arthur. You ruined me, all because you couldn't stand to sit next to a black woman. Get out. I want a divorce. The social, financial, and professional pillars of his life were obliterated in less than 24 hours. Meanwhile, at Astria's London HQ, Serafina was in a 10-hour marathon of meetings. She met with the new Dignity Initiative team, led by a still stunned but fiercely determined Brenda. They were given a multi-million-dollar budget and a simple directive. Fix this. Make our people feel safe and our policies feel real. She met with her operations team, outlining a plan to internalize all security-sensitive baggage scanning, pulling it away from all third-party contractors. It would be expensive, but the Vanguard breach gave her all the justification she needed. Astria's stock, after the initial wobble, had rebounded. After her powerful statement, it didn't just recover, it surged. Investors loved the decisive leadership. Passengers loved the story. Social media was flooded with people booking flights on Astria, calling it the Karma airline. Serafina Hayes hadn't just weathered a storm. She had become the storm, and it was a storm of good publicity. The day ended. Serafina stood in her penthouse office, looking out over the lights of London. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from her father, Elias Hayes, the company's founder, now retired in the Caribbean. It was just a link to the viral video, followed by a simple message. Taught you well, proud of you, Dad. Serafina smiled, a genuine, tired smile. The public part was over. Now the final, private pieces of justice had to be put in place. The next morning, at 9 a.m. sharp, a physically and emotionally shattered Robert Chen was ushered into Serafina Hayes' boardroom. He was flanked by a severe-looking woman who introduced herself as Dr. Eleanor Vance, Vanguard's new Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer, and a nervous-looking man who was David Kim, the new acting head of North American Logistics. They looked like they had been dressed by a funeral home. Robert, thank you for making the trip, Serafina said, not standing. She gestured to the 20-foot-long oak table. Please. The Vanguard team sat at the far end. Serafina sat at the head alone. I trust your flight was acceptable, Serafina said. It was fine. Thank you, Serafina, Chen mumbled, opening his briefcase with shaking hands. We have the plan you requested. We have the termination notices for the 14 managers. We have a proposal for the new contract terms. Stop, Serafina said, holding up a hand. I'll read your proposal later. First, I want to talk about Arthur. Chen flinched. He's gone, Serafina. I did as you asked. His name is Mud. He'll never work again. I know, Serafina said. I'm not talking about his punishment. I'm talking about his replacement. You've brought Mr. Kim. Yes, Chen said, brightening slightly. David is one of our best. Harvard MBA, top of his class. He's been running our Asian Pacific division. He's also Arthur Pendleton's brother-in-law, Serafina said flatly. The air was sucked out of the room. David Kim went rigid. Robert Chen's jaw dropped. What? Chen whispered. David Kim is married to Julia Pendleton's sister, Arthur's wife. You didn't think I'd check? Serafina slid a file across the table. You fired Arthur, then brought his own family, his own co-conspirator in building that old boys club culture in here to fix the problem? Serafina stood up, her voice vibrating with a cold fury. Did you think I was stupid, Robert? Did you think this was a game? Did you think you could just swap one smiling face for another and keep the rod in place? I didn't know, Chen protested, looking at Kim with betrayal. David, is this true? David Kim, seeing his career evaporate, just nodded, his face pale. I am insulted, Serafina said, walking slowly down the length of the table. I was insulted on my plane. And I am insulted here in my boardroom. You're not here to fix the problem. You're here to manage me, to placate the angry black woman and wait for this to blow over. No, Serafina, I swear. You're done, Robert. Serafina's voice was final. Mr. Kim, you can leave. Go back to whatever division you were in. If Mr. Chen is smart, he'll accept your resignation by the end of the day. Kim, humiliated, stood up and walked out of the room without a word. Serafina now stood directly in front of Robert Chen. Dr. Vance, the new compliance officer, looked like she wanted to be swallowed by the floor. Here is the new non-negotiable reality, Serafina said. Your proposal is rejected. The 25% cut and the $50 million penalty? That was the we can fix this price. This is the you lied to my face price. She slid a single sheet of paper in front of him. You are not renewing your contract. You are selling your North American and European ground operations divisions to me. Chen stared at the paper. It was a term sheet. Sell. You want to buy us? You can't be serious. I am deadly serious. Vanguard is toxic. Its brand is worthless. Your stock is in the gutter, and your board is moments away from firing you. This is your only way out. I am offering to acquire your assets, your equipment, your infrastructure, and your non-management employees for pennies on the dollar. Specifically, $400 million, a fraction of its worth. But it's $400 million more than it will be worth next week when I announce I've given the contract to Swissport. Chen was hyperventilating. This is corporate raiding. This is justice, Robert. You built a company that sheltered men like Arthur Pendleton. You built a company that compromised my airline's safety. You don't get to run that company anymore. I will buy your assets, and I will hire your ground crews, the good people your managers were abusing. I will bring them in-house. They will become Astria employees. They will get our benefits, our pay, and our protection. She pointed to the paper. Your board will agree. It's this, or Chapter 11 bankruptcy before Christmas. Your call. Robert Chen looked at the term sheet. He looked at Serafina Hayes, her eyes like diamonds. He saw no negotiating partner. He saw an executioner. He slumped in his chair. You'll need to talk to my board, but God help us, they'll take the deal. I know, Serafina said. Dr. Vance, you'll be coordinating the transition. You work for me now. Your first assignment is a full audit of every employee you're sending over. I want every last Arthur Pendleton found and purged before they ever see an Astria uniform. Dr. Vance, seeing her own career saved, nodded vigorously. Yes, Miss Hayes, with pleasure. Good. Now get out of my boardroom. You have a lot of work to do. Robert Chen, a broken man, was led out of the room. The great Vanguard Solutions, a $10 billion company, had been brought to its knees and dismantled in 48 hours. All because one of its executives couldn't bear the sight of a black woman in first class. 6 months later, the airline industry felt different. The Astria Dignity Initiative, spearheaded by Brenda, had become the gold standard. She had traveled to every one of Astria's hubs, personally leading training sessions, using the video of her own failure as the core teaching tool. Look at my face, she'd say. That is the face of fear. Fear of the wrong person. Never let a shiny card make you forget your humanity. She was now the permanent vice president of in-flight experience and culture. The former Vanguard employees had been fully integrated into Astria. Renamed Astria Ground Operations, their new bright blue uniforms were a source of pride. Pay had increased by 30%, benefits were comprehensive, and the abusive managers were a distant memory. Efficiency and safety scores at airports like JFK and O'Hare had skyrocketed. The move, while expensive up front, was already paying for itself in reduced errors and higher morale. Serafina hadn't just removed a cancer, she had replaced it with healthy, thriving tissue. And Arthur Pendleton? His name was a curse. After the divorce, his wife sold their Connecticut home at a loss just to escape the notoriety. He was unemployable. No logistics company, no airline, not even a small shipping firm would touch him. The viral video was his permanent resume. The last anyone heard, he was seen working a temp job, driving a delivery van for a local office supply company, wearing a polyester polo shirt and a look of permanent, hollow-eyed defeat. The man who once commanded a billion-dollar logistics empire, who flew first class across the globe, was now paid minimum wage to haul boxes of copy paper. The karma was not just hard, it was poetic. Serafina Hayes was at JFK's Terminal 4 again. She was no longer incognito. As she walked to the gate, passengers nodded, smiled, and sometimes even quietly applauded. She was a celebrity, but more than that, she was a symbol. She was boarding Flight 108 to London. As she approached the gate, the agent, a new hire, looked up, saw her, and beamed. "Welcome, Miss Hayes. It is an honor to have you on board." "Thank you," Serafina smiled. "It's a pleasure to be here." She walked onto the plane. A flight attendant greeted her. "Welcome, Miss Hayes. Can I get you a pre-departure glass of champagne?" "That would be lovely, thank you," Serafina said. She settled into her seat, 2B. A moment later, a man sat down in 2A. He was a young, black entrepreneur, nervously clutching his laptop bag. He looked at Serafina, his eyes wide. "Oh my God," he whispered. You're her. You're Serafina Hayes." Serafina smiled warmly. "I am. And you are?" "Darnell," he said. "Darnell, Washington. I'm flying to London for my first ever investor pitch. I'm terrified." "Well, Darnell," Serafina said, raising her glass as the attendant brought it. "You're on the right airline. We don't tolerate failure or bullies. Let's talk about that pitch. You've got 10 hours. Let's make sure you're ready." Darnell's face lit up. Serafina leaned back, the cabin secure, her company whole, and the sky ahead clear. She hadn't just owned the airline. She had reclaimed it. And that's the story of how a single moment of racist arrogance led to the total downfall of a powerful executive and the complete transformation of an airline. Arthur Pendleton thought his status made him untouchable, but he forgot one crucial rule. True power isn't about the card you carry, it's about the character you keep. Serafina Hayes didn't just teach him a lesson, she rewrote the entire rulebook. What did you think of this story of hard karma? Do you believe the punishment fit the crime? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. If you love stories where entitlement meets justice, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who needs to see it, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more real-life drama and karmic retribution every single week. Click that notification bell so you never miss an update.